a thing.
You'll hear us when we unmute our mics to talk. We're getting ready to start the stream now to open the meeting.
Okay.
The regular board meeting of the Governing Board of Trustees for Romoland School District has been called to order at 5:31 p.m. Mr. Reller. Oh, roll call, sorry. Mr. Reller.
Here.
Mr. Sperry.
Here.
Ms. Kleitz.
Here.
And myself, Mr. Aguirre. Mrs. Moon will be 10 minutes, arriving a little later, 10 minutes. Do we have any public comments for closed session?
No, we do not.
Okay. So closed session is called at 5:32 p.m. to discuss public employee disciplines, dismissals, release, negotiations, and superintendent evaluation.
And I think Gary got mine.
The regular board meeting for the Romoland School District has reconvened at 6:31 PM. Did we have any actions taken in closed session?
There's no action taken.
Thank you. We'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our governance norms, we agree to act with dignity, respect differences, build trust, work as a team, engage the public, focus on the success of every student, and work together for the common good. So for governing Board of Trustee reports, Mrs. Kleitz.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Well, first of all, very, very excited about all the work that our district's been doing for the preparation for opening back for our elementary students. On another note, we received some very sad news, actually today, that one of our previous board members, Mr. Roy Yost, who served on the board for quite a few years. I had the privilege, and Mr. Reller had the privilege of serving with Mr. Yost. Remarkable man, and I think some of the people that have been around know Roy. Roy was also a employee of the Romoland district, and I know he was a custodian at, I believe, Harvest as well. And you see all those trees out there at Harvest, you can thank Roy for those. And then a lot of the trees at Romoland, he talked about that he helped plant as well. Roy was a kind person, and his heart was the Romoland School District. His wife, Mary, was also, who had died previous years before him, was also an employee of the Romoland School District and worked at Harvest as an instructional aide, I believe, and for special ed kids, an amazing lady. But Roy served us well. He did nothing but wanted the best for Romoland. He loved the kids. He built relationships with the kids. Roy had the interests of kids' hearts and their education at the forefront of everything. Roy was at the forefront of many, many important decisions as the board. Creating our middle school was one of them. It was a big controversy back then. But Roy was a pivotal person in that decision. And there's been many others, but he will be sorely missed by his family, and our condolences go out to the family. I know I loved the man. He was a great guy and a good person to know.
Thank you. Mr. Reller.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Thank you, Ms. Kleitz, for bringing up Roy. Roy wasn't a very vocal person. He was very reserved and would think about a lot of the things that we did together here on the board, and to make decisions, as Ms. Clyde said, had students at the forefront of every single one of his decisions he made. And Roy didn't only serve as a member of our Romoland School Board. Roy was active in the community, active in the church, active in advisory councils throughout our community. Anything that happened here in Romoland that supported our community in any way, Roy was involved. As Marla said, Roy was an employee of the district. His wife, Mary, was also an employee of the district and very connected to our community. Mary passed away a number of years ago. And it was very, very sad to see that, but it was very nice to see Roy, still keeping going. And it was a very shock to hear that he passed here recently. Ms. Kleitz mentioned some of those decisions, and she mentioned the big one with respect to Romoland Elementary School District going from a K-8 school district to a K-5, 6, 7, 8 model. And I can remember that vote to this day, and it was a 3-2 vote, and Roy cast a deciding vote for us to move to a different model, because it is what was best for kids and it was what was best for our community. At that time, I can tell you there was a large amount of our community that was not in support of that decision. But Roy knew it was best for kids in the long run, and I can tell you every single one of them came back to us as a board in years ahead of that decision, or years after that decision, and said thank you, because they saw what vision Roy had and the board had for our school district, because we saw the growth of the district, and Roy was instrumental in that. And Marla talks about his love of trees and planting those throughout Romoland Elementary and Harvest Valley. So I would really like us to examine board policy and find out how we plant a new tree, dedicate a new tree with a brass plaque at Ethan H. Chase Middle School in memory of Roy Yost, because if it was not for him and his courage to take that position, we would not be where we're at today. So that's one thing that I would like to request in memory of Mr. Yost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reller. Mrs. Moon.
I just want to add my deepest sympathies, and then also to share that I'm super excited that we have our kids going back to school.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Moon. Mr. Sperry.
Yeah, just looking forward to getting the kids back in school. It's good to hear this Monday. It's great to hear that, and I hope all goes well in the start of the school. Problems are to a minimum, So I really hope things go well, and glad to see things finally moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sperry. And then myself, likewise, just feels good to be back here. I know it's different from what we were used to, but hopefully everything will be back to normal very soon, or at least as close to normal as possible very soon. And just excited for the direction and what the district is going and what we've done to make this possible. So we'll go on for Mr. Payton.
Thank you, President Aguirre. We have some good news to share in the district, and so I'll take some time to do that. Recently, we had 3 principals, Dr. Echeverry from Romoland Elementary, Mr. Mitchum from Boulder Ridge, Ms. Gerardes from Mesa View. They were invited by the National Center of Urban School Transformation, we call them NCUST, to serve on a roundtable and share their work to ensure educational equity for all students. We've enlisted the help of NCUST for several years as a mentorship and coaching program for our principals. And it's around equity for all students. And so this is a national organization, and for 3 of our 5 principals to be asked to share their experience and the great work they've done is a credit to their leadership at their respective school sites, also a credit to the great work of their staff members in ensuring that no students falls through the cracks in our school system. So that's a kudos to those specific schools. Another item, we had a school recently, Harvest Valley Elementary, receive a RAMP Award. And RAMP Award is given by the American School Counselors Association. I'd like to thank Ms. Rosalind Carroll, the counselor at Harvest Valley, for her leadership, but also the entire Harvest Valley staff in working to achieve this recognition. The RAMP Award is a pretty prestigious award in the world of school counseling. Last year, there were only 8 schools in the entire state that achieved that recognition. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was about 72 schools across the entire country. So it takes an entire year to collect data, to submit your application, and Ms. Carroll was the leader in that forefront. So we'll be recognizing Harvest Valley and Ms. Carroll at our April board meeting for this achievement. But we do have an item on our board agenda in relation to this month. And so I wanted to give a shout out to them. And that recognition lasts for 5 years for Harvest Valley Elementary. So a great job. And we expect to have other schools coming on board with that soon as well. And then the last thing is we were once again named a model SARB program from the state of California. We're eligible to apply for that recognition every other year. And we've had it, I think, going on 4 times in a row now, so probably covering 8 years or so. This year has obviously presented unique challenges, but our Director of Pupil Services, Ms. Carmen Cass, and the school site administrators adapted to those challenges at hand, put together a great system of support and accountability for student attendance. There are multiple layers that involve teachers and many support staff, and we appreciate everyone's effort in maintaining our high standards that we set as a district, despite the challenges presented to us this year. So a good celebratory evening on many things for us as a district. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payton. We will now move on to recognitions and announcements. Ms. Wise, or Dr. Wise, sorry.
I hope this microphone's close enough.
It is.
Okay, very good. Okay. For students of the month for March, from Boulder Ridge Elementary School, tonight we honor Jade Cruz, 5th grader, and Jessica Garcia, 5th grader. From Harvest Valley Elementary School, we honor Germán Arellano, 3rd grader, and Isabel Vargas, 1st grader. From Mesa View Elementary School, we honor Avery Alpine, 2nd grader, and Aria Mullen, TK. From Romoland Elementary School, we honor Trinity Rodriguez, 1st grader, and Louis Ragumas, grade 4. And from Ethan A. Chase Middle School, Sarah Casas, grade 8, and Kamari Washington, grade 7. We have more recognitions this evening.
Do I call on each one?
Go ahead.
For 2020-2021 District History Day competition, Dr. Wise.
Thank you. Tonight we are honored to, honor many students who competed in our district academic competitions. I'll start with History Day. I think I will. Okay. For Romoland History Day, our first place winner, 5th grader Mackenzie Smith. In 2nd place, from 5th grader from Mesa View, Nicholas Sandoval. And 3rd place, 4th grader from Mesa View, Bailey Izzo. Science fair?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. For science fair, we have many winners to celebrate this evening. I'll share that they were equally first place, and to move on to the the county science fair. 5th grader Emma Kreider. 5th grader Catherine Danford. 4th grader Jacob Drummond. 6th grader John Valenzuela. 8th grader Shyla Valenzuela. 4th grader Eli Green. fourth grader Layla Ol. We also have some runners up that we'd like to honor. Fourth grader Josephine Moraza, fourth grader Anaya Myers, and fourth grader Eva Ramirez, all from Boulder Ridge. And then the spelling bee, another one of our district competitions. So in first place, we have sixth grader from Ethan A. Chase Middle School, Alexis Colleen. And in second place, fifth grader from Boulder Ridge, Jessica Garcia. Moving on, and they moved on to the county spelling. And then we'd like to honor our coordinators who help us coordinate these events every year, but particularly this year in the virtual environment. For History Day, Assistant Principal Heather Hiltz Fitzgerald. Science teacher from Ethan A. Chase Middle School, Phil Hodder, organized science fair. Thank you, Phil. And also thank you to Assistant Principal Margarita Duran for organizing the spelling bee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wise. We will now move on to communications, public comments, and association reports. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. I will. First, we have a few, so I'll just read them back to back. The first one actually has a picture, a photo for you as well. So while I'm reading it, Mr. Butler is going to display it. The first comment was submitted by Ms. Colette Reyes, who is a Harvest Valley teacher, and she submits this comment on behalf of second, first, and kinder teachers. And her comment, dear school board members and district administrators, last year, the district installed a new fence gate around the second and first grade classrooms facing Briggs. We are very grateful for the additional security to both the students and teachers, but this took away teacher access to the pod door entrance for teachers located on this side of campus in the morning. Recently, the district changed the lock on the gate facing Watson near these classrooms to a master key lock, which is also the only way to enter the new fencing and gate on Briggs. The only people with access to the fence and gate and the side gate are people with a master key, which are admin and DO. This has created a big inconvenience for teachers with classrooms that are located along the Briggs side of campus. Teachers were told to avoid entering the office to keep the number of people to minimum in the office during COVID, and this is forcing all teachers to enter the same hallway in the fourth grade pod. In addition, many teachers are carrying heavy computer bags and supplies in the morning to their classroom. A few teachers come early in the morning when it is still dark. Therefore, teachers are working twice as hard and now have to walk twice as far to get to their classroom. What I am asking is that the fencing and gate on Briggs be rekeyed so teachers can enter on the Briggs side of campus. This is a safer solution and is more convenient for those teachers who come early in the morning when it is dark and those who wish to follow the COVID guidelines. That concludes her first comment. The second comment was also submitted by Ms. Colette Reyes, a Harvest Valley teacher, and it was in regards to concerns with school openings. These questions are from a concerned teacher from Harvest. Are there any consequences for parents bringing students to school sick? What if a student refuses to wear a mask? Will we be notified if a student is sick or has COVID? No sink or bathroom near my classroom. What about manipulatives for students? What if the stuff is out of the student's reach? Stable group. What about aides that rove? Will we have set times for breaks? How will we make sure we are separated? Will there be disinfectant wipes in common areas and classrooms provided for us to wipe down stuff? Will spray stuff be given? Ventilation in my room is recycled. How is this safe? What if a student is dropped off early, picked up late? Recycled air purifiers. What if a student is in the classroom? Will class go into quarantine? 10-day quarantine for anyone in exposure? What about bathroom use for staff? How often will bathrooms be cleaned? Doesn't a stable group mean no one should be entering the stable group? Staff lounge, nowhere to eat. We are not meeting as adults, but it is okay for kids to be in our room. PLC, same thing. Adults shouldn't be near each other, but for kids, we can all be in the room. What is the earliest they can enter the classrooms? And that concludes that comment. The next comment was submitted by Colette Reyes, Harvest Valley teacher, in regards to school opening. This is from a concerned teacher from Harvest. I have a lot of concerns and questions regarding the opening of school next week. I do not think that the younger grades are being fully taken into consideration about when it comes to opening. Most, if not all, of our TK Kinder students have never been to school before, ever, let alone Harvest. How are they going to know where our classroom is on the first day when our older siblings and parents cannot bring them to our class and teachers must remain in their 6-foot box in front of the class? How are we going to show them their seat? What do we do if our students run out of our class? This is very common with kinders and TK in the first few weeks in school, as they have never been to school before. What do we do if a student will not detach from their parents at drop-off? How are we going to teach letters and sounds with a mask on our face? How do we get them to the bathroom when they have never seen where they are at before? How do we make sure the kinders and TK are not intermingling with upper grades in the bathroom? Harvest Valley has only 2 student bathrooms on campus and only 1 for staff. How can siblings not be able to assist with drop-off and pickup of younger students, but they are allowed to commingle in the bathrooms during school? These are just some of the concerns I have about returning with the current restrictions we have in place. I want to make it clear that I want kids to be in school. I want to be able to teach them, as I do not think virtual is best for most students. However, I struggle with the idea of how to effectively teach 5- and 6-year-olds who have never been to school before and meet all of their needs while maintaining the safety guidelines. I want our kids to be safe, but also have all of their needs being met, as students do not learn if their needs are not met. And that concludes that comment. The next comment was submitted by Ms. Donna Irvin, Harvest Valley teacher, regarding reopening of schools. Good evening. I would like to address the opening of Harvest Valley. I'm excited to come back to in-person instruction. However, I would like to address the inequities of the restrooms and sinks at our site. Harvest Valley has only 1 staff restroom for men and 1 staff restroom for women for the entire campus located in the office. How will the restrooms be safe in between staff members, especially with the amount of people using them? In addition, we were told the district was going to be adding a bathroom and hand washing stations for portables to help keep our students and staff safer. There are no sinks in the portables, nor is there a bathroom close to our area for students as well as staff. Students will have to go across campus to use the restroom, and adults in my area have to go to the front office. There is no option to wash our hands at all unless we go to the front office bathroom. Although hand sanitizer will be available, it is not the same as having the ability to wash our hands with soap and water regularly, as classroom teachers and staff have, causing inequities among classrooms and safety for those of us in the portables. I understand that adding bathrooms and sinks are expensive, but it has been an issue at Harvest Valley for years and has been addressed with district administration numerous times throughout these years. With the pandemic, it seems this would have been a priority for our campus specifically, since bathrooms or sinks have not been added. Will portable restrooms and/or hand washing stations be added
to address this situation before we come back. Although portable stations are not ideal, it makes it more equitable to our site, specifically those in portables. Simply having a hand sanitizer pump in the classroom is not enough. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next comment, and actually the last comment, was submitted by Adrian Lamoth, Mesa View parent, in regards to the COVID-19 safety and opening plans. Good evening, board and Dr. Wise. My name is Adrian Lamoth. I'm a parent to 3 Romoland School District students. In reviewing the Romoland School District's COVID-19 safety and opening plan for 2020-2021, updated in February 18th, I became particularly interested in the section concerning community communications and effective community engagement strategies. As we prepare to reopen our SD campuses for hybrid learning, many parents are concerned that children will not be available before or after school for the students of working families. Recently, I discovered that Lazy Creek is the only Menifee recreational facility offering after-school childcare services. As our school district prepares to begin reopening campuses for hybrid education next week, it's imperative to support working families with essential services such as childcare programs. The Romoland School District COVID-19 safety and opening plan states that the district develop effective community engagement strategies to include qualitative and quantitative surveys, focus groups and listening sessions with target stakeholders, previews of draft plans with representative stakeholders to build early understanding and solicit real-time feedback, appointment of representative stakeholders, administrators, students, educators, parents, guardians, union leaders, etc., to steering communities charged with developing plans. Have any of the above been done to solicit feedback from working parents and engage local child care providers in supporting sites reopening? Is there a plan to offer child care resources to working families? Currently, many child care facilities are at full capacity, and the Lazy Creek facility is currently limited to only 12 children, with 3 children currently on the wait list. Families returning to work and students returning to school campuses must have these essential child care services available, or we risk prolonging the negative impacts to our community's children and families during the pandemic. District families would like to know what the district plan is to work with child care providers and families to ensure these services are available in the coming weeks. We appreciate how hard our board, district, and school staff are working to support our students and families through this difficult time. Thank you in advance for your response to these time-sensitive questions. And that completes the public comments for this evening.
Thank you, Nikki. Mr. Brady, could you give us a follow-up on some of those concerns?
Sure.
Thank you. Move on to employee association reports. Do we have any association reports, Mr. Murray?
There are none this evening.
Thank you. We'll now move on to information items. First one, post-election analysis. Citizens for safe and quality local K through 8 schools, Measure P. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, President Aguirre. Board members and Superintendent Payton, at this time, I'd like to introduce you to Joy Coomer. She is from Props and Measures, and she was going to go through an analysis of the post-election review of the Measure P.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. I know you have a busy evening tonight, but I'm happy to answer a few questions at the end. As everyone knows, this was on the ballot for November 3rd of 2020. And this brief overview is just to help provide planning for the future and an understanding of how the election results ended up. The final results were very close. Measure P needed 55% to pass. And as everybody probably knows, that we came very close at 53.55%. way to do the math on that would be to say an additional 437 yes votes would have pushed Measure P over the threshold. That would be yes votes with no additional no votes. It's also important to know that Prop 15 in your community, and I show this slide because I think it provides some context. Both Prop 15 and Measure P failed to pass this past November. Prop 15 was the proposition that would have increased funding for California's public schools. It would have changed the assessment of commercial and industrial property, but not of homes. You can see here that Prop 15 only got 40.33%. Measure P did much better overall. And it did much better overall, even in your community, as compared to how people in your community voted on Proposition 15. It's, we saw in March that there was a lot of confusion around Proposition 13, which was the statewide bond measure. And it's possible that some of that carried over and just influenced a little bit of the November election. But clearly you did much better on your local bond issue than the statewide Proposition 15. These are just the election results by city. You can see how much each city makes up of the registration of voters in your school district. Menifee makes up 58.8% of all registered voters in your district, Paris 14.75, and then the unincorporated areas just a little over 26. Menifee is where we had the lowest support at 49.38%. They made up 60% of the ballots in November. This is clearly, and we'll look at a map that shows it is one area that I think it's just critically important as you're doing communications. Keep in mind that this is a group of individuals who are likely impacted by the overcrowding, but also just need more information about how critically important a future ballot measure like Measure P would be. And this is the map that I was talking about. You can see, where were the areas, those bright green areas where it was over 60%. It's clear you had a good, obviously you had a majority of support because we were over 50%. Where, however, we struggled a little bit is in those precincts that are directly in the Menifee area. And this just is another way of looking at it, and you'll have all these materials, but you can see that that greatest concentration of voters is down in the bottom left quadrant of this slide as well. So it is really an area for future communications. I know many of them would be impacted by a new school. So just keeping that in mind as you move forward with your communications. So just a little outreach of overview of what we'll be looking at next. So these were our polling results compared to the final results. And you can see that we really were within the margin of error. These on the bottom shows our initial ballot test, the interim ballot test, which is information after they received information, and then the final ballot test. All three of those showed us over 55%. However, that poll was done in December of 2019 before, obviously before COVID, and a very big change in our environment overall. And it did have a margin of error. So we really were within our polling results and did incredibly well, including with the campaign committee, considering the incredibly tough and challenging environment.
Mr. Aguirre?
Yes.
Will they be telling us where these precincts are specifically? Because I would assume that 52,417 are precincts. Is that correct?
Yes, so those are those Menifee precincts. So if you back up
Okay,
to
56,923. I don't think that's a Menifee precinct. That's north of the 74, if my geography is correct. 56,923?
we can take a look at those numbers, and I can send that to you as a follow-up. Menifee was where we received the lowest support for the ballot measure, so we can just go back to those, and I can send you a follow-up to that to make sure that we've identified them.
It looks to me that's the only place we didn't get support. Everything else is above 60% support.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
it is-
so one of the questions that I have is, and I don't know if this is to you or to whoever, what specifically were we doing in that community to make sure that they got our message about the impact of not passing this bond? I know it was in the middle of the COVID, but I was walking precincts that are solid green, and I'm not sure how effective I was, but it surprises me that precinct 52103 voted the way they did, because that's the school that we were going to build was going to serve that community. So
Yes.
I don't know if you can tell us, because I'm trying to judge the map. Only thing I can see is where 74 is, and just guesstimate where it tails north, and then where the 215 is.
Yeah, I had to pull the map back up on my own computer. So keep in mind that the precincts, the numbers themselves, this was the data that we received from the Register of Voters, and they do sometimes change the numbers. These areas are, I believe, still a part of the Menifee community. I would need to take the map and pull it apart a little bit more so that I could see some of the roads below. But I do believe when we were looking at these numbers, they were specifically labeled by the Register of Voters as Menifee. And you asked what was being done in the Menifee community. There were walkers that were going to that area. We, in fact, really tried to spend more of our time calling and walking that area. We did not want to ignore the other areas because we thought it was important that they also hear from us. So thank you very much for going out and walking. I think all of that was really important. But, you know, the campaign really did an excellent job considering the challenging circumstances of getting out and, you know, talking to people at the doors and making phone calls. But we did actually spend a lot of time in that area and tried to do concentrated areas, efforts in the Menifee community. Honestly, I think part of the challenge is that that area has also, you know, pays a lot higher taxes because of some of the other bond measures that have been passed in the community over the years.
I'll add to that, Mr. Reller, that when we did our precinct walk, we actually did put more teams because we knew the density of voters in that in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had more precinct walk teams walking that general geographic area than in some of the other areas, strictly because of the density of voters and some of the challenges associated with knowing that there was already a higher tax rate in that area.
The message did not get to them because they're the ones that are going to be the ones that are going to be feel the brunt of the impact of what we may have to do in the future. So we need to do a better job of communicating that to those constituents, that if we don't pass this bond, this is what's going to happen. I mean, you said it at the meeting, but it's clear that that message didn't get to them. And we're very fortunate that we're able to project out a few years. Project out a few years to be able to maintain our space availability without this bond measure. But we're really going to have to do a better job of not only during the bond time, but also in between now and then, communicating that this is reality. And this is how much a school costs, And this is what good education brings your community, and increased property values. So we got to figure that out.
Yeah, I honestly, as close as we came in this election, I think that there was a full ground effort. And when you look at, like I said, another tax measure that was Prop 15, and compare how we did compared to that, I agree with you. It's really important to target that community. I think this makes that clear. But I also think that we were still in November. Things were very uncertain. We were, people were trying to figure out, their own financial stability. And it's very hard to talk about overcrowded schools when kids are at home with kids, with their parents. And I just think that it was a challenging environment. And it wasn't that voters wouldn't be prepared to support you in the future. I think we were really impacted by the circumstances and not so much by not, doing a good job of communicating. Because I really felt like this district in particular had a lot of very passionate, hardworking volunteers. A lot of communities chose not to walk this past November because of October and November because of COVID. So I just think the fact that we came so close in such challenging times is a heartbreaker, but it just shows the dedication of the district. And I think it shows that it can pass in the future. I'll try to quickly go through the rest of the slides here for you, just so that you can see some other quick comparisons of numbers. So just quickly, turnout, we expected turnout to be about 84.4%. Actual turnout was 81.4%. There was very little drop off in the ballot measure, and almost everyone voted by mail. This is looking at turnout by party. We cannot say how each party voted because we never know how individual voters vote, but it just helps to understand how many voters you have in each category. We also know that it was, a very partisan election with the two presidents running, as they often are, but they also have the most people turning out. You have a pretty even split between Democrats, Republicans, and others. And you can see that Republicans and Democrats turned out pretty evenly in your community. So Democrats made up 38% of ballots, Republicans close to 37%, and then all other identified voters turned up at about 25%. Future efforts just need to, keep that in mind so that you are speaking to all political parties, because we need support from all of them in order to get over 55%. This again is just looking at turnout by city. Again, you can see Menifee turnout was at 78%, Paris at 71%. These are high numbers in what we expected overall. But you do have 8,700 people who voted from the city of Menifee. So they really did make up the bulk of your voters. This, I think, is also really important. The campaign committee was able to identify 480 yes votes through walking and calling. We also communicated directly with parents, and you can see how they turned out compared to turnout of others. Obviously they outperformed, and I think that is a nice compliment overall to the campaign. Our IDs didn't make up a high percentage of ballots, but your parents do make up almost 10%. So you want to keep communicating with them, because they are key communicators, and they do make up about 10% of people who will vote in a likely future election. And then lastly is looking at age. I believe this is my last slide. You do have your voters spread out a little bit amongst all age demographics. However, those aged 55 and above turn out at the highest levels. So if you look at age 55 and up, they made up close to 40% of all ballots cast this past November. So actually it says there 37.5 of all ballots cast in this election. They may not have people in, students in schools. So it's just really important that they also understand the importance, because they may not be personally experiencing the overcrowding. And it's just, helpful to provide this in a way that they may understand in the future as well. And I think that was my last, this was just turnout, sorry. As you know, most people voted by mail, and there was a little bit of voters that, half the voters voted before Election Day, 60%, and then a few people mailed their ballot on Election Day, with really a very small percentage showing up at vote centers. And this looks at turnout by party over time. So you can look at when Democrats voted and when Republicans voted. Sort of following the national story, Democrats tended to turn in their ballots sooner. Republicans tended to hold on to their ballots till the very end. The trend here just follows the same statewide trend that we saw for all voters in November. These were some of the things that the campaign did. Just taking a look at, the 2 mailers that were sent out. They made over 3,400 calls, knocked on about 1,500 doors. We had 4 Facebook ads, including a GOTV at the ad reminding people to vote and vote yes on Measure P. Things that worked well, we thought we had a good message that resonated with local community members. Volunteer operations were a little bit harder in COVID, but many people showed up and put in time, and it was really appreciated, and I think it made a difference. We also were able to send out the 2 mailers and do some digital outreach. In a future effort, maybe including some texting or some other ways to reach voters when we can't reach them by phones. And these are just some final findings. We really thought that overall, considering the challenges, Measure P did very well. It came close, and we're sad to report that it did not get over 55%. But I truly believe if you look at a future effort in 2022, which is when the board could consider a future bond measure again, I think this shows that there is a path to victory and that you can be successful on a future bond. So viability and just more, I don't want to read the slides because I don't want to take up your time, but these just really were, some things that we saw. The economic uncertaintiness, the dangers of the pandemic, they just made it a very hard campaign environment to talk about overcrowding when, students weren't yet in school. And that is everything. I was trying to be very quick, so I apologize if I didn't go into a ton of detail, but hopefully this is helpful, and I'm happy to provide a future, information if anyone has questions.
So it's more of a comment than a question, because the data is clear, and I'm sure that the pandemic had a small impact on our ability to get out there and provide some, information to our community of why we need this bond measure. But my question to the board and a question to the staff is, in 2022, we know we're going to need this bond because there's not going to be another pandemic to reduce the need for seats in our schools. So what are we going to do between now and then that is going to get our message out, specifically to everyone, about the need for new schools, the need for improvements at all of our schools, and the benefits of doing that? So you know, we have an amazing communications person here. So I would like to have us have a discussion, or at least get some input from our communication director, how we're going to do that. Is that going to be with annual messages to this community, person to person, like a state of the district that we've done in the past? Is it going to be a continual message from the district to ensure that our parents are communicated with respect to the need? Because really, they didn't know about any of this until we put a bond measure out. And that's our fault, that we didn't communicate this. So we need to come up with some sort of plan to ensure that this does not happen again, because I don't know what it's going to look like in 2022 with the need for schools and with respect to the state school construction bonds and things like that are going on. So I'd like to have that conversation sometime, how we improve our communication to our community about the needs of our school district and the benefits of providing those resources.
Mr. Reller, I agree with what you're saying. And I think we do need to have a little bit more communication out there to our stakeholders of what our situation is with our overcrowding at some of our schools, and just maybe ever so often have a report on, you know, our capacities or something. But I totally agree with some.
All right, thank you for that. We'll move on to K2, COVID-19 school impact update. Mr. Payton.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. I'm going to be brief tonight. We went through an exhaustive list of our preparation at our last board meeting, and there were still a few pending items at that time, and I want to just basically articulate to the board what's been done since our last meeting. I believe it was February 23rd to now, as we get ready to open schools next Monday. And so I just thought I would very quickly touch base on the progress we've made over those last few weeks. So in terms of COVID-19 testing, we were a little unsure of only having one vendor or provider at our last board meeting. And since then, we have secured a second provider. Their structures are a little bit different. So Valencia Labs, which will be providing testing at Romoland and Harvest, they're about $21 a test. Previously, they were about $50 or $55 a test. They've just recently gave us a price reduction. And that's for students and staff. They handle Medi-Cal billing for eligible students. So they will only bill us for the students that don't qualify for Medi-Cal billing, which is great. And they handle the back end of that. And after the tests, so for instance, we did a sample run with staff today. We deliver the test to a lab in Riverside, and the feedback on that process was very smooth. The second vendor that we secured was Curative, and we're going to be using Curative for Boulder Ridge and Mesa View. The price for their tests are $40 a test, but they test staff for free rather than charge staff. And they also provide free shipping via UPS. So the gist of it is we want to take a look and use both of these and see how that service is being provided and the reliability of that service. And if one surfaces as a better option, then we would transition at that point. But we have confidence that we have secured enough tests to move forward for school opening. Last week, Mr. Murray and myself visited school sites, and we conducted site audits of schools for signage and spacing and safety protocols and equipment and things of that nature. I'm pleased to say our sites have done a tremendous job in getting prepared to open school. And we classrooms, outdoor areas, you name it, they are ready to go. Staff underwent training on all of these topics. I will not read to you this past week. And we are offering makeup sessions this week for any staff that may have missed those opportunities. And we feel like we've done this one round before, I think right before winter break, but then there's been some updated training and guidance. We had to update our modules according to this new guidance, and staff has been trained and are ready to go. Our air filtration and circulation. So all sites, all elementary sites had their MERV 13 filters installed by March 5th, which was last Friday. Those filters are recommended by the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning, as well as the Center for Disease Control for the reduction of the COVID-19 virus transmission. And we also have the ability to open our doors in our classrooms for fresh air to circulate in, and we can override our air control system so that air is being circulated even through that process. Communications that have happened since our last meeting. On February 24th, we confirmed the hybrid model for those families that had selected traditional and hybrid at the beginning of the year. Then on Monday, March 1st, we confirmed our targeted date, at that point a targeted date of March 15th for TK through 2 students and March 22nd for grades 3 through 5. We also informed parents and guardians of the student schedules that they could access in the parent portal so that they could see the days their child would be attending. Gave us an opportunity to make adjustments if it was needed. On Friday, March 5th, we communicated about COVID-19 testing schedules that would be available for students and staff. And we have our video that will be released to parents and guardians, our safety videos that are created. Those will be released tomorrow to our families as well. And the last slide that we really have is our bargaining unit collaboration. We've conducted and maintained open lines of communication with our bargaining units as concerns and issues have been addressed, or they have been addressed as they arise. It's my feeling that the district, the Romoland Teachers Association, the CSCA Employees Association, we work together as partners through this entire pandemic. And we had conversations about that early on, about the importance of working together to find solutions to the issues as they arise. It's not always easy, but I feel like that we have been great partners throughout this process. And the results of that partnership are that during the course of this entire time, the pandemic's been going on, we've had 4 approved MOUs with our Teachers Association. One is up for consideration tonight on our board agenda, and 2 approved MOUs with CSCA. And so the next slide should say it all. We are ready to go. And so I can take any questions from the board at this time, but I just want to reassure the board that we've got our systems and protocols in place, and we are ready to have bright, smiling faces back on our campuses on Monday, March 15th, right? So.
Hi, Trevor. I have a few questions, and I know that you all are very prepared. In the staff training sessions that you provided, did you review the items that were brought up during public comments by the teachers at Harvest?
Those have been addressed in various formats. And so some of those may have been addressed through training sessions. Some of those may have been addressed by their own teachers union or in communications that we put out to all staff. So there's no absolute in one way or the other. We get a lot of questions, and when we start to see a pattern of common questions, then we usually would embed that into a formal process versus addressing it on a one-on-one.
Right. Is there, a resource like we had several public comments from the Harvest teachers at Harvest. So is there contact point for information for their questions, the principal, or is it, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody is aware of what it's going to look like. I liked your pictures showing the desk spread.
Right.
I don't know, have we addressed the portable restroom issues with the sinks? Does that mean that we would have to have those blue portable restrooms? I don't know. And then the last question was the fencing accessibility, making that an easier access for those that I guess are over by Briggs.
So typically we'll follow up with the site administration and have a debrief tomorrow based on public comments, and we'll assess what the current status is and develop a plan if there are misunderstandings so that there are none by Monday.
Okay, perfect. Oh, and sorry, one more question. On the air conditioning units, I know that we added the filters that they recommend to filter out COVID. Do the air conditioners, I think they do, but I'm not positive. I think they're recirculating air right now, but can't they be switched so they circulate outside air and then addition to those COVID filters?
I will have to follow up with you on that notion when I check with Mr. Parham, our director of maintenance.
Okay.
We also do have the ability to bring fresh air into the classrooms by opening doors as well. And that becomes part of the process, not just recirculating the same air over and over again.
Right.
So that's part of the plan as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
again, great job. The classrooms look amazing. And I hope it's a smooth opening. I'm sure, everything's new, but with everybody embracing the situation and knowing that they're going to have to be flexible and that, we're just figuring this out. So I think that makes it very helpful that everybody's supportive and, on the same page and want to make it as easy for the teachers, staff, and our kids. So thank you.
And I'd like to add just one comment to the board. I've asked Mr. Payton to provide us on each week with the number of staff and students that are taking us up on the voluntary testing, and what percentage of that is of our total staff as well as total students, just so we have a good idea of the amount of testing that's going on. And I think it's a great idea to have two vendors, just in case one gets overwhelmed, because we're not their only customer. So I think that was a great idea of the staff. And some of the pictures that I'm seeing are not too unfamiliar with what is going on at every school and district in this county. The MERV 13, that's always a sticking point. And I'm so happy that our staff got ahead of the game, because there are districts right now that are waiting on those MERV 13 filters to install. And that's one of the holdbacks. But in Romoland, we were ahead of the game and got those ordered in and got those ready to go ahead of time. So I think the staff and bargaining units and everyone involved did a great job, the best we could possibly do in the circumstances we're under, and listen to what the science is saying. Hate to be cliche, but we have to listen to that and do our very best to ensure that our schools are as safe as we can possibly make them for our students and our staff to return, because returning to school that's where our kids need to be. That's where they're going to have that social emotional growth and take care of some of those impacts that being away from their peers and away from school has done.
Thank you. Move on to K3, educational equity through personalized learning. Dr. Wise?
Good evening, Board President Aguirre, board members, and members of cabinet. This presentation is a synthesis of the educational equity work that's been done in Romoland School District with developing and implementing the district's local control and accountability plan, known as LCAP, over the past 7 years. We have completed 2 3-year cycles of the LCAP and are now developing our third 3-year LCAP plan. And at the core of our educational equity work is our focus on personalized learning. I know we've been very focused on opening schools, or first virtual schooling for this past year and opening schools, but we also can't forget that ongoing work, right, of the school district that we do in terms of serving students, and it's all educational equity, including the opening of schools. There it is. Okay. So it's best to begin with the definition, the formal academic definition of educational equity. It is educational policies, practices, and programs necessary to eliminate barriers in education based on gender, race, ethnicity, national origin, color, disability, age, or any other protected group status. Also to provide educational opportunities to ensure that historically underserved or underrepresented populations meet the same rigorous standards for performance expected of all children and youth. Also, promote equality of achievement results for each student and between diverse groups of students. And ultimately, equity strategies are planned, systematic, and focused on the core of the teaching and learning process. And it's truly what we've been working on for years here in Romoland, and we've seen the results with achievement increases. Okay. This visual, and I'll use the pointer here, explains the difference between equality, equity, and personalized learning. Equality here is giving each student the same educational experience. However, as demonstrated in this picture labeled equality, giving everyone the same experience, tool, or strategy does not support all students having access or being successful. In this picture, all students are given the same size stool, but they still can't see over the counter. They were equally given the same stool, but they still don't have access to the lesson. In the equity picture next to it, the students' stools have been adjusted to meet their size and needs. And now they can view the activity. But it can be even better than that. Giving each student the exact tools they need for their personalized learning needs gives them a chance to be most engaged and most successful in the task. And that is what we call personalized learning to achieve true equity. In Romoland School District, we have embarked on defining personalized learning. We had a Future Ready committee of stakeholders who spent a year developing the personalized learning definition and plan, not just the definition, the plan. But this is the definition. At Romoland School District, personalized student learning is defined as student-centered learning experiences intentionally designed by educators to achieve student mastery of instructional outcomes, utilizing delivery methods and tools that honor individual student needs, voice, choice, and learning time. This is the path we've embarked upon, and we will continue to grow as we go into this next 3-year LCAP cycle. So while this definition is focused on teaching and learning, there's more to educating students than just academics. We need to focus on the whole child. So we're going to look at what we've invested in for the whole child in Romoland School District over these past, 7 years and somewhat beyond for some things. So foundational for equity, you guys, is facilities. And we talked about facilities earlier. One intentional decision of this board, as mentioned earlier, was to build Ethan A. Chase Middle School and move from K-8 school district to elementary schools and a middle school. Another intentional decision was to remodel the oldest elementary school, Romoland Elementary School, that was remodeled a few years ago to be equitable with the other newer schools in our district. Our schools are all outfitted with modern technology, equipment, and furniture to ensure students at all schools have access to high-quality facilities. But also, as mentioned earlier, our ongoing district growth and need for a new school is an item for us to continue to address for the purposes of educational equity. Also foundational for ed equity is the mindset of staff. Developing our cultural proficiency as a district began 7 years ago when we developed a diversity task force. That group outlined strategic actions, such as inviting powerful keynote speakers like Consuelo Kickbush to staff events, inviting staff to attend the Museum of Tolerance professional learning events, and engaging cohorts of staff in studying cultural proficiency. We then implemented the Navigating Difference professional development series for all staff members, and this work continues for all newly hired staff. We also expanded our instructional resources to ensure students can see themselves represented in the curriculum. And then there's family engagement. I know earlier Mr. Reller mentioned our communications coordinator. We've invested in increasing our communication staff and improving our tools, such as our website and our mass communication system. Our schools all host family events such as PK and literacy nights. We provide opportunities for parents and guardians to have voice and representation through school site council and district advisory council, English learner advisory committee at each school site, and the district English learner advisory committee. And we also have LCAP stakeholder teams for each school, as well as the early childhood education program. Equity means also getting resources for people. And this district has invested in health and community resources as well. In addition to family engagement, it's important to invest in our health, our community resources. This includes meals for students provided by our nutrition services team. And there are students and families in need, particularly our foster and homeless youth. We added a school engagement and foster youth liaison a few years ago to support students and families in getting them the supplies they need and connect them to local resources. Our district also invests in student health with a district nurse, the RN, 4 LVNs, and 2 health technicians to ensure that all our school health offices are fully staffed throughout all school days. Also, social emotional learning and behavior was an area that this board, the school district, has invested in. Student mental health matters. We offer a multi-tiered system of support for students' social, emotional, and behavioral well-being. Over the past 6 years, we've moved from having 1 counselor at the middle school to investing in 6 full-time school counselors to ensure there are full-time school counselors at every single school in this district who provide whole group and small group social emotional learning skill lessons for students and individual student support for students in need. And last year, based on student needs, we added 2 school-based mental health therapists to support students in need of one-on-one therapy, services for mental health needs such as trauma or anxiety. We also have a team of 4 school psychologists on staff, and this year we expanded services with Care Solace, which connects families to medical mental health professionals when more intensive therapy or treatment is needed. And we did this all before the COVID pandemic. Our timing was just right because our stakeholders expressed a need and this board responded to that investment. So we were ready to have support for mental health of the community, even as we went into COVID-19, which we know mental health has now become somewhat of a national crisis, exacerbated by COVID-19. All of what I've shared so far adds up to students wanting to be at school. It contributes to safe, engaging, and supportive school environments. All our schools are either Leader in Me schools or AVID schools, which allows for school-wide shared agreements among staff for methods of student engagement and student leadership development. We also have a multi-tiered system of support for attendance and engagement, which has resulted in success, as mentioned earlier by Superintendent Payton, about our district being recognized as a state model SARB district, from which other districts can learn our methods, our techniques. And all of that having focused on the whole child, takes us back to academics. All of this is equity. As shown, ed equity is not and cannot be academics alone. It is all the elements just described. It's systemic. It's all the elements of the system. All of this supports students' academic success in our quest to give each and every student the opportunities to pursue college and career in their future. We focus on first best instruction and personalized learning in our academic multi-tiered system of support. Assessment of student learning and analysis of student achievement data through teacher PLC collaboration are critical system elements. Teachers are offered ongoing professional development to develop their tool belt of skills to provide personalized learning through an array of methods, assessment, interventions, and enrichment. This district has also invested in a variety of electives at the middle school, including engineering, robotics, theater, band, visual art, AVID, and Spanish, including, which I'm so proud of, AP Spanish, a college-level course for 8th graders who, in general, are native Spanish speakers, and our kids overwhelmingly pass. The last time we had a 100% passing rate on that test, which is phenomenal. At the elementary level, there's been investment in a music program as well as PE specialist teachers. And of course, we have grades. We have for all our grades, one-to-one technology devices. And we began that investment 7 years ago, long before the pandemic and virtual learning made the need for those devices. We were on that path. So this brings us to the present time. How do we go forward? This past year has given us the opportunity of disruption created by the pandemic. Our LCAP stakeholder teams are currently engaged in considering educational equity through this statement by California State Board of Education President Linda Darling-Hammond. She said, one of the things that we need to think about as we take up issues here is whether we will revert to the system as we've known it, or will we take steps to transform the system in ways that will improve education for students in California. California has an opportunity to use the disruption created by the pandemic to make schools more equitable, more socially responsive, and more academically engaging than some of them may have been before. Our LCAP teams are reflecting upon the past year with the pandemic and virtual learning to identify the positive things that have occurred and that we've learned through this process of this past year, things that we should hold on to and continue in future years. They're also identifying ongoing areas of growth and improvement for the benefit of students, because we never stop reflecting and working to keep improving our services for kids. Our district has been a leader in addressing educational equity through the LCAP process for the past 7 years, and we will continue to do so moving forward. And at this time, I welcome your questions.
I just got to say, wow, on all of the programs that we've had prior that makes our school what it is today. And just to know that all that is in place already from us moving forward and be able to open up and offering all these amazing services that we have and holding that bar up high. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
No questions here, just a comment. Dr. Weiss, first of all, I appreciate the presentation that you just gave us. And I know you cut it down, you might have cut it down quite a ways just so you could fit it in. But I hate to say the model of excellence, but Romoland is an excellent place to be. And it's with hardworking staff members from our custodians to our classified to our certificated administration. And we have a lot of great programs. And I do know that we rise above. And all these programs, a lot of them were instituted long before COVID. But I think your quote that you read was very true. How can we take, the COVID time and make our schools even better and stronger and not revert back to where we used to be? So thank you for your work.
I just have a couple things to add. With this educational equity, in some circles, it's it's a shame to hear that word is getting a bad rap. Doesn't, sometimes it's based upon what news show you listen to. But in education, this is where equity has its foundation. And I really like the thought process of when we talk about equity, we talk about providing what each individual student needs to achieve both academically and socially emotionally. In your illustrations, you talked about the different sizes of chairs. But I would like to take that one step farther is, what are those chairs standing on? Maybe one of those students, the floor, the ground is crumbling underneath them, and they don't have any way of controlling that. So what are we doing to support that? And we are supporting that. We have Ramp Award at Harvest Valley. We have model SARBs. All of those programs and systems that we have in place are addressing as, whatever a student needs inside our walls of our school, as well as outside of it. Schools have become the center of our community and the center of the lowest form of elected official is at the school board level. And when a parent doesn't know what to do, where do they go? They go to the school. And we are the ones who provide all the resources and access to different things and information. So what I see, everything that we're doing, and I focus on number one, and it's eliminating those barriers. And it is truly personalized to each individual student when our teachers and our staff know our kids' stories and understand when a child comes into school a certain way or having a certain attitude or doesn't have their homework done, one reason or another, our teachers know their kids' stories and understand their perspective and why that is occurring, so they can provide whatever is needed for our kids to be successful both academically and social and emotionally. And I just want to end by saying those eliminate the barriers doesn't mean just academically and social and emotionally. It could be, how this board has said, we're going to provide resources for kids to go on field trips. We're going to provide resources for kids to play athletics and activities and the band. All those things are needs that our kids have that are different. And the personalized approach is one that I think we are leading the way, and it's evident by Mr. Payton being visited by our county superintendent, Dr. Edwin Gomez, and he asked Trevor and I'm sure Ms. Weiss, you're going to be by his side, present on our plan. So, keep up the good work. One thing I would like to add, and I don't know if we have it, is a parent engagement survey that we can do, because we talk about LCAP and getting our stakeholders' input, but it would be really nice to hear what they truly think about parent engagement at our school sites, when we ask them anonymously. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are approved in one motion. Do any of the board members have any comments or questions in regards to the consent agenda?
I hate to say this, but I got a comment. But such a jam-packed agenda with some great stuff in it. This personnel orders, subs. We're hiring a lot of subs, getting ready for us to come back. I noticed we have somewhere on the agenda a discussion about increasing our sub pay. Great thinking ahead. Promotions, we've talked about that in the past here as a board. And lastly, every time you turn on the news, you talk about what is in our administrative regulations 4119.11 about sexual harassment. And it's very important us continue to refine our policies to provide our leaders at the school sites as well as at the district office training on how to recognize that and put in procedures and policies to protect our staff and to take action when those instances do occur.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
All motion?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Rowler, Mr. Sperry, Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. We will now move on to the actions item. Prior to moving on with this agenda, action item M8, memorandum of understanding between the Romoland School District and the Romoland Teachers Association. Items need to be amended to include an additional attachment. Mr. Murray?
Please explain this item.
That particular item requires the attachment of the updated MOU with the Romoland Teachers Association. It was ratified today, in fact. So that's been added to the agenda and we're good to go.
Awesome, thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept the additional attachment for action item M8 as presented?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussions? No? All right, all in favor, Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Being that the board approved the agenda amendment, item M8, memorandum of understanding between Romoland School District and the Romoland Teachers Association, will now include the additional attachment in the consideration of approval when the board gets to this item. We will now proceed with the agenda and begin the action item section, item M1. M1 is 2020-2021, second interim financial report. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, President Geary, other board members, Superintendent Payton, and members of cabinet. Tonight, I'd like to present you the second interim report. Just to orient the board to where we are at this point, this is our annual budget cycle. We started back in June with the approval of the 2021 budget. Feels like such a long time ago, but finally after that, due to the final passage of the state budget, there were changes that needed to be made to our budget and the 45-day budget revision. Soon after that, in the month of August, we approved the closing of the books for the 1920 year as the unaudited actuals. In December, the board approved the 2021 first interim, and now here we are tonight to look at the 2021 second interim. So we're required to present twice a year to our board and report to our county the fiscal status of the district. This is an opportunity for us to review our financials, and we self-certify ourselves as to the status of our financials at this time. So the current second interim report looks at all activity through January 31st. There's tremendous value in these reports because it allows us to keep a close eye on what is going on throughout the year and give communication out to our stakeholders to let them know how everything is going with our financials. And it also allows us to project out for 2 more years to see how we're doing in the future. On the left side, this is our sheet for major assumptions. On our left side, we're looking at our revenue assumptions. So for the current year, we're being funded on last year's ADA, which is $3,999. The LCFF is fully funded as it has been for the past couple of years. We did see 0 COLA, despite an uptick in revenues collected year to date from the state. They've opted not to include a COLA in the current year budget. Our unduplicated pupil population, so again, that's our count of our students that are eligible for free reduced price meals, our foster youth, and our English learners, is on a rolling 3-year average at 72.74%. And then we also include unearned revenues from the 1920 school year that we hadn't spent prior to closing the books, and we're going to spend this year. And then we have the addition of all of the CARES Act funding. For the 21-22 year, we look to be growing to 4,079 ADA. We anticipate the LCFF to be fully funded again. And then we look at the COLA there, it's a 3.84%, and I'm calling that a compounded COLA, because what that is, as I indicated in the 2021 year, the revenues are up for the state, so they're not giving us a COLA for this year. They're going to give us this year's COLA next year. We're going to get a 1.5% COLA that really belongs to the current year, added to a 2.34% COLA for next year, giving us a net COLA of 3.84%. We do see a slight decrease in our unduplicated pupil population for the 21-22 year. As I indicated, it's based on a 3-year rolling average. And in the in the 1920 year, we did see a slightly lower unduplicated pupil population percentage. So that brings that down just a little bit for that year. Moving on to the 22-23 year, we see estimated ADA to continue growing up to 4,161. LCFF should still be fully funded, and the COLA will be 2.98. And then you see the unduplicated pupil population go back up a little bit because that one down year in 2019-2020 is taken out of the 3-year equation. As far as expenditures go, we include estimated step and column for all employee groups in all 3 years. In the current year, we set up expenditures to expend the restricted carryover funds that we have. And then we have budgeted CARES Act funding that we anticipate to be able to spend in the current year based on our spending deadlines. We did see a slight decrease to our CalSTRS contribution this year from 0.95% to 16.15, and an increase to our CalPERS contribution. For next year, again, adding the step and column, we see STRS goes down slightly and PERS goes up. And based on our anticipated growth, we are planning to add 1 certificated FTE. Similarly, in the 22-23 year, we account for the cost of step and column for all our groups, an increase in CalSTRS contributions, and an increase to CalPERS contributions, and the addition of 1 more FTE on the certificated side, again, due to growth in enrollment. This is the status of our CARES Act funds. So these are the CARES Act funds that we have specific dollar amounts on, and I'll go through these real quickly. The first amounts that we have there for the coronavirus relief funds. So that was a $3.3 million allocation. Those funds had to be fully expended by the end of December. Then we had a Prop 98 based, that's our state funding for COVID. This was the only state funding we received for COVID. Everything else has been federal to this point. $346,000 has been fully expended. The deadline was the end of this fiscal year. Then we have the 2 other pots of money there, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER, and then the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, or GEAR. Those funds are available to be spent through next September 30th. And we plan to spend some of those ESSER funds this year, leaving us a remaining balance at the end of the year of $221,000. We don't anticipate a need to spend the GEAR funding this year so far. So we'll have all those funds available. And then most recently in December, legislation was passed to add additional federal money. And that's now the CRRSA, which is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And that's actually made up of 2 pots of money. One is the ESSER 2 funds, essentially, and that's the dollar amount that's there, $2.3 million. And there will be a second GEAR funding that's available. However, we don't have dollar amounts for that yet. So we haven't received these funds yet, and the $2.3 million has not been received. The other ones have been received. So we're planning on having those available to spend through September.
How flexible are those CARES Act money?
The ESSER funds are the most flexible. Essentially, the cost has to be something that we wouldn't have seen without COVID. So if we can justify a way that we could say we wouldn't have incurred this cost without COVID, then something that we can spend those funds on.
So from my experience, there's been a lot of families that have been required to double up in communities, which increases our ADA, which increases the need for schools. So how do we make that argument to help us build schools in the future?
There are provisions in the Act for capital expenditures, so it is something we'd have to reach out and request. I mean, the dollar amounts aren't large enough to be able to cover the cost of any large construction, but potentially adding of portables or something like that is something that we could reach out to the state to see if they would approve something like that.
The presentation that we had last month, I can't recall exactly who gave us that presentation, but it was might have been you, sorry, gave us a nice understanding of what's coming in from our CFDs potentially. And that was about 3 years out, if my memory serves me right, 3 or 4 years out.
7 years out at the.
Okay, 7 plus 3. So those are things that, are all twirling in my mind because we know, what happened just with Measure P, what's going to happen, in the future. How can we harness these resources to help us with our end game, what we need here in Romoland without taxing our community as much as a bond measure might. So that just thoughts running through my head, but I could be completely wrong, but it might be something that we could, get some information on if that's even possible.
Get some information. And then none of the CARES Act funding that was listed there includes any of the state money for returning to school this year. We have an estimated $1.3 million potentially coming for in-person instruction grants and $3 million available potentially for the expanded learning opportunity grant. That was the agreement that the legislature and the governor just came to recently. So we'll have more information on that. So as we look at our multiple year projection, we look at, the budget, the enacted budget, it always has a difference from the operating budget because we bring things into the operating budget that weren't available at the beginning budget, along with anticipated cuts to revenues that didn't materialize. Due to the anticipated growth and the cost of living adjustments that we're projected to receive, we do show an increase to the fund balance in the current year, and in the third year, we do show a deficit in the second year that is eliminated through the growth in student population and the COLAs. The criterion standards is the part of the interim reports where we go through and we look at things that could be potentially concerning for us to look at if there's issues that we want to dig a little deeper into. One of the things that we definitely always want to look at is cash. Our cash is currently adequate for our operations. However, we continue to remain in the pool for the tax and revenue anticipation note through the county of the Tran because the deferrals are still slated to continue through this year. So it's good to have that insurance just in case something does happen. We don't have cash on hand. We're able to draw from those funds. We're able to meet our reserve in all 3 years at 3.5%, and we're not using any one-time funds for any ongoing expenditures. All this to say, tonight staff recommends a positive certification. Again, we self-certify. We think based on the data that we have available to us now, the district will be able to meet its financial obligations for the current +2 subsequent years. And just some final thoughts. Relative to the June 2020 estimates, we are doing really good. All the economic indicators are on the right path to exceed our pre-pandemic levels. Based on the lowered estimates of our Prop 98 funding at the beginning of the year, this increase that we're seeing based on the COLA that we will receive next year for this year is the largest upward revision of Prop 98 since it was passed. We always want to look at these things with a sense of caution. We just need to look at last year. When the January budget announcement came out, everything looked really good and there was a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things. But then by March, we were looking at potential cuts. Fortunately, those didn't materialize in the form of budget cuts, but only in the form of deferrals. So the next thing that we will, the next update we will have from the state is the May revise. That's the next statutory update that will be provided to us to help build our budget up. Do we have any questions?
There's a, on your 2020-21 budget, second interim, MYP page, 4, something like that. Are any of the CARES Act money in that, on those figures?
In the current year, if you look at the column for 2021 second interim,
Yeah.
there's revenues and expenditures for CARES Act funding there.
Let's see, I'm in the one with the blue column. Yeah, that one.
Yes.
I don't see any red.
No, in the revenues row, in the expenditures row. So the second row of dollars there is the money, the revenues.
Okay, it's in there? Okay. And the two $223,387, the increase in expenditures, is that due to COVID-19 expenses or?
That's actually an increase to the ending fund balance for the year. So when we're looking at those numbers, it's just revenue compared to expenditures. And so in that case, we plan based on what we know now that we're going to have more revenues coming in than we're actually going to expend this year. That's a net positive to the bottom line.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Geary, aye. We'll move on to M2, Southern Cal Super Co-op Annual Renewal. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, President Aguirre. And in an effort to be as efficient as possible with our nutrition services dollars, we are a member of a co-op that is able to purchase United States Department of Agriculture commodities at a reduced rate. And so what we're asking the board to do tonight is approve our continued membership in that co-op.
Do any board members have any comments or questions?
Does Sodexo have anything to do with this co-op? Do they manage it? Do they?
No, sir, it's just a group of school districts that all get together. There's multiple co-ops throughout the state that purchase these commodities from the USDA.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Motion. Second.
Okay. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Geary, aye. M4, Independent Auditor Selection, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Geary. Each year, school districts must certify that they will retain an external auditor to review their financial statements. We're asking the board tonight to approve an agreement to continue using Eide Bailly as our external auditor. That's the audit firm that we've been using for the past 3 years, and we'd like to enter into another 3-year agreement with them.
Any board members have any comments or questions?
Do we ever have to go out for bids for this, or how's that work?
Because of the dollar amount, it's not required to go out to bid, and it's a professional services contract, so.
Awesome.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll
Do
second.
I have a second? Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Move on to M5, request for a proposal for food services management company to assist with Romoland School District Nutrition Services Program. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. As a district that utilizes a nutrition management company, we annually must approve an agreement. We previously had an agreement that began in 2016-17 and then was extended in 1-year increments for a total of 5 years with the current company that we use. It's that time where we need to go out and request bids for companies to offer these services to us. This process is a lengthy one. It actually started back in the fall when our nutrition services department was working on getting everything together for this request for proposals for this services. So with the board's approval, we will publicize a request for these services proposal. And at that time, there will be a process where the potential vendors will have to come out and do a facilities tour and then ask any questions. And then once those questions have been answered, they'll have to submit a proposal. The proposals will be opened and then judged by a 3-judge panel, at which time we would like to bring back a potential contract with whoever that vendor might be in May, so that contract can begin in July for the new school year. We're just asking for approval to begin this process of soliciting offers for RFP.
And this is the one that Sodexo currently has?
Correct.
Yes. All right. Any board members have any comments or questions?
You
Did you
said that
say,
we extended it. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Kleitz.
I was just going to say, this happens every 5 years. Is this correct?
It's correct. The agreement that we entered into with Sodexo was a 1-year agreement that allowed for up to 4 more 1-year renewals. And so we've exhausted those renewals.
Okay, thank you.
Great minds think alike, Ms. Kleitz. That was my question.
Yo.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll
I'll make a
motion.
motion to approve.
Second.
Do I have a second? You want a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving on to M6, Out-of-State Conference 2021, American School Counselors Association Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. Dr. Weiss.
Thank you. This item is connected to what was mentioned earlier about Harvest Valley being nationally recognized as a ramp school for the counseling program. The national conference this year is in Las Vegas, Nevada in July, and that is when the award will be presented. So at this time, we're asking the board's approval for an out-of-state conference for Superintendent Trevor Payton, Principal of Harvest Valley Daniel Todd, and Harvest Valley Counselor Rosalind Carroll to attend the conference to receive the ramp award.
Thank you. Any board members have any comments or questions?
I just want to make sure that all safety protocols will be followed. We don't know what July will bring, right? With COVID and everything. I want assurance that safety protocols will be followed.
Yeah, Ms. Kleitz, the tentative plan is to have an in-person conference, but they've put the disclaimer out that if there is an escalation in COVID, because obviously we're dealing with unpredictable times, that they may have to alter that plan and make it more of a virtual conference. But as of now, the plan is for in-person if everything stays trending in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
I'll
I have a second. Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Move on to M7, sunshine item from the Romoland Teachers Association. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, so we actually have the fortunate opportunity to go into negotiations on a topic other than COVID. And RTA has presented our sunshine items for the 2020-21 school year. The items include salary and benefits, preparation periods, stipends and hourly rate, class size, RTA president release time, job descriptions, and virtual learning environment. So those are the topics that we will discuss in negotiations this school year.
Do any board members have any comments or questions? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second? All in
Second.
favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving on to an M8. This is a memorandum of understanding between the Romoland School District and the Romoland Teachers Association. Mr. Murray.
The agreement outlines the district's response to the COVID-19 pandemic as it relates specifically to our employees who are represented by the Romoland Teachers Association. The agreement includes a variety of issues, but mostly focused on staff safety and details regarding the instructional program.
Do any of the board members have any comments or questions? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Thank you. Moving on to M9, uh, Certified Staff Early Declaration Incentive. Mr. Murray.
You know, as we prepare for the upcoming school year, we've identified a need to identify staff who are planning to retire from our school district. And the hope is we can find out about retirements early in the hiring session. So as a result, we are proposing that the district provide a $1,000 payment to members of the certificated staff who declare their intent to retire by April 1st of 2021. This early declaration will provide the district with the ability to recruit and hire replacement staff for the 2021-22 school year early in the hiring season.
For this one, so they would notify us by the 1st of April?
Exactly.
And when will they be notified of this incentive?
They'll be notified tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. Do any board members have any comments or questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving to M10, substitute teacher salary schedule, Mr. Murray.
This evening, we're asking the board to temporarily increase the rate of pay for our substitute teaching staff from our current pay rate of $140 per day to $200 per day. This would assist the district in our efforts to recruit and equally importantly, retain our substitute teaching candidates and staff as we return students to in-person learning.
Thank you. Do any board members have any comments or questions?
On this, I do. It's from 140 to 200 till through June. Is there anything in writing that says it's going to go back to the 140, or is that left open?
You know, it would go back to the original rate. I think we would have a discussion over the summer about what our rate should be for the upcoming school year, but this would conclude at the conclusion of the current school year in June.
Okay, because what I'm seeing here, when you go up to 200 and you come back to 140, what's going to happen with that price difference? Things don't go away that easy.
This one would
Increases.
automatically sunshine in June, so it automatically would revert back to the 140 per day.
It will do
That's
that.
automatic.
That's in writing in the contract or
Exactly.
the writing of this. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I have a comment. I just think it's a great idea to do this because we are going to be needing substitutes, and having an incentive salary like this would be a good thing to bring substitutes to our district. So do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
second? Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving on to M11, Memorandum of Understanding between the Romoland School District and the California School Employees Association. Mr. Murray.
You know, this agreement outlines the district response to the COVID-19 pandemic as it relates specifically to our employees represented by the California School Employees Association. The agreement includes a variety of issues, but mostly focused on staff safety and adjustments to work assignments that are results of the specific needs for our district's response to COVID.
Thank you. Any board members have any comments or questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleitz,
Aye.
Ms. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving to M12, Resolution Number 13, 2020-2021, in support of a waiver request on statewide assignments. Mr. Payton.
Thank you, President Aguirre. Recently, the United States Department of Education and President Biden indicated that states must administer standardized tests to remain in compliance. That news is causing quite a bit of disruption. I'm not sure about other states, but across the state of California, as we are just now bringing students back into school, and their experience will be welcome back. Here's a standardized test to take. And many educators feel like the social, emotional well-being of our students should take precedent over a standardized test when kids have been learning virtually for the last 12 months. And the passage of this resolution, and this is going on across our county, and I'm sure other counties as well, but the passage of this resolution by the board would basically give me permission to write a letter that would make it to the State Board of Education next week, as encouraging them to apply for a waiver for standardized tests for our students for this academic year.
Thank you. Do any board members have any comments or questions?
I've got a comment. I wholeheartedly support this because I think we need to look at the kids' social and emotional. They've been out of school for an entire year, but they've been learning virtually. And, you know, then it would be, well, welcome back to school. And by the way, you're going to sit in your seat and you're going to take tests for the next, I don't know, until the end of the year. It's just going to be eaten up. It can only set our kids up, I believe, sounds kind of strange, but I think it can set kids up for failure rather than success. So I wholeheartedly support this.
I agree with Ms. Kleitz. Any other comments or questions?
I would just like to add to that what Ms. Kleitz says. This is beyond unreasonable and so illogical. That's why it is so important for us to make sure that our elected officials, federal elected officials, know why this is wrong, why this is not what is in the best interest for our kids. There's no longer for this year, there's no longer a participation rate. Parents are going to figure that out, and they're not going to have their kids take the test. So what impact is that going to have on our data? And in addition, as Ms. Kleitz said, the kids have been out since March. And once parents understand the waiver process, that's going to be a continue, throughout the years. We may not make the percentage rate in the future. So the data is not going to be reliable. It's not going to provide us any type of guidance on instruction because everyone is going to just look at it or not even look at it. What we need to do is, as Ms. Kleitz said, focus on our students' social emotional well-being. When they come back, start working on getting that in order. Then we can continue focusing on academics and getting their get that learning acceleration going to get them ready for their next school year. Taking the amount of time that it is going to require to administer an assessment like this, kids aren't going to do anything but test. So we need to call all of our elected officials and get on them and make sure United States senators, United States Congress people, and make sure they know that this is not what is best for kids, and put pressure on the Secretary of Education as well as the President of the United States, because he's the one that's got to tell him to just cool his jets.
I would add also that, in talking, I know internally we have local assessments that can identify learning gaps in kids that we administer that we've used for years. And they've served us well as tools. And so it's not like we're sacrificing the identification of where kids' learning gaps may reside. We have internal assessments that do that, and we can share that out with our community in place of standardized test results. So that's kind of the conversation that is taking place across the state right now.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
A motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Geary, aye. Moving on to M13, COVID-19 safety and reopening plans. Dr. Weiss.
As part of the school opening process, Romoland School District has multiple aligned plans. For the past year, we've had the Romoland School District COVID-19 safety and opening plan. It has been updated and aligned with each update of California Department of Public Health and Riverside County guidelines from Public Health. In addition, for opening elementary schools in the purple tier, we had to develop an OSHA COVID prevention program known as the CPP and a school guidance checklist for grades TK through 5. Those have both been approved by Public Health and California Department of Public Health. And so additionally, we've also developed a school guidance checklist for grades 6 through 8 to open for the middle school when Riverside County reaches the red tier. At that point, with just that document posted for 5 days, we will not need to seek approval from County Public Health for that document. Those 4 items, those 4 plans are being presented for your approval this evening.
I'd like to add one thing before the board enters into discussion. The formal approval of this also is one of the requirements to access some of those funds that Mr. Bacon referred to earlier with the incentive grant that the governor and the state recently came to agreement on. And so one of the criteria is that the board approve these plans, even though really they've already been approved at the county public health level and the state level. But we want to clear this hurdle so that we don't lose access to those incentive grant funds as we open.
Thank you. Do any board members have any comments or questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Mr. Sperry,
Aye.
Ms. Kleitz,
Aye.
Mrs. Moon,
Aye.
Mr. Reller,
Aye.
and myself, Mr. Aguirre, aye. Moving on to end information item, early childhood education annual policy and procedures update. Dr. Weiss.
Thank you, President Aguirre. This is a first reading of the Early Childhood Education Program Policy and Procedure Updates. This process is done annually, reflecting new guidance from county, state, and federal guidelines for our early childhood education programs. They would come to you again next month for approval.
Thank you. All right. So we will move on now to closing comments. Mr. Reller.
I just have one thing to add. I want to commend our superintendent. The board has asked him weekly to send out a Friday communication corner. And I'll tell you, I told him in an email that the last communication corners were just a plethora of great news and accolades that our staff is getting. We've talked about many of them tonight, but one thing we didn't, it came from the CTO's column, and it is a great picture of Erin Lipsitz that she comes to school to teach, and I'm just looking at her classroom here on her desk, and she's got like this monster screen, this Elmo looking thing, her document camera. There's like 2 of them there, a laptop, and then there's these kids that are on the screen are just smiles and interacting, and they're reading about a cloud, and I guess it has something to do with rain and stuff like that, but it's really, really interesting. Oh, here it is. Interactive flat panel, laptop, external monitor, document camera. What dedication. That's amazing. And I know we have many teachers just like that, but Erin was just happened to be highlighted in our communication corner with Vince, and I do appreciate that, and it was really neat to see.
Thank you, Mr. Reller. Ms. Moon. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Reller. Mrs. Moon.
Nothing to add. Just wishing everybody a great and safe return.
Thank you. Ms. Kleitz.
I concur with that very much about a safe and I'm going to throw in happy and joyful return. Superintendent Payton, I was wondering, is it communicated, and I do not know this, and I'm asking a question, is it communicated to our parents why we're not going with the after-school programs because of the safety factor? Do they know that? And if they don't, is that something we could get out to those parents?
Yes, Ms. Kleitz, we have a communication scheduled for tomorrow, so we will include that information
Yeah.
in that communication.
Yeah, I think it's important for them to know we're just not doing it because we don't want to. You know, it's all about safety, and I think once they hear that, that might make a little bit more sense. And then maybe in our communication corner we get every Friday, I'd kind of like to have the district keep an eye on our new enrollments from this point on into the end of the school year. Our new enrollments at every grade level, and somehow, or just district wide, I would say. Make it easier each week. Just kind of keep the board abreast of our new enrollments. I just have a feeling I think we're going to gain more students.
Do that.
Thank you, Ms. Kleitz. Mr. Sperry.
I have no comments.
Myself, Mr. Geary, just excited that things are starting to open up, and just excited for the kids to come back and to see how all of this preparation has really set us up for success. But that is it. I just want to thank everybody for this time, and our regular board meeting is adjourned